We have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is public appearances, public's opportunity to speak about any subject that's not a specific agenda item. I think we've got a couple here. Oh, yeah, we're just messing with you. So liquor license. This is the insurance claim I don't think was on the agenda.
No.
And if I am going to try it, Kurt Rydell, is that
Yes.
correct? If you want to come up here, please, and just identify yourself because the cameras are up there.
Sure. I take a seat?
Yep.
Thanks. Name's Kurt Riedel, and not sure how I should proceed from here to start talking.
Sure, just
All right, on December 24th, Christmas Eve, I hit a pothole on Highway BB. Pothole was approximately 48 inches long by 43 inches wide and 8 inches deep, caused $2,200 in damage to my vehicle. I called in, made a claim with statewide insurance agencies, and it was eventually disallowed. So I'm here to contest that because they claim that you guys have discretionary immunity, which allows you to be disallowed from the claim. And I looked up, quite a few different laws, and I tried to have Doug Detley lay out where the case law has been that allows you guys to disallow this. And he wasn't able to provide anything, so it's not his job. Well, it is his job. So I'm looking here, and damages caused by highway defects, liability of municipality if damages happen to any person or his or her property by reason of insufficiency or want of repairs of any highway that any town, city, or village is bound to keep and repair, the person sustaining the damages has the right to recover the damages from the town, city, or village. For a pothole to grow to 48 inches long, 43 inches wide, and 8 inches deep on the number one traveled road in Cottage Grove, I mean, that's just gross negligence. There's no way that should happen. And that part of the road has been distressed for years. I grew up in Cottage Grove. I mean, I've spent many, many years here. And it's right by the swamp. That road constantly breaks down, falls apart. And you can see it's just littered in potholes and pothole repairs. And that should be fixed. It should be completely ripped up, fixed, to avoid that problem from happening again. So, in this case, I hit a pothole that had grown for who knows how long. I mean, to reach that size, that's just gross negligence. I mean, there's no other reason a pothole should be that big. I mean, if it's a small pothole, yes, it's winter in Wisconsin, that stuff happens. But it was so large that, and I saw it was the thing, there's a car to the left of me, the only way to avoid it was to hit that car. It took up approximately 1/3 of the lane. There was nowhere I could go. I was forced to hit it. And I believe that my claim should be allowed.
this is not a situation where we can ask a bunch of questions about it, but we just
Sure.
want to get this on the record then, so thank you.
Okay, so how do we proceed from here?
Lee, is there a response that we can?
Well, I guess we could put it on the agenda to give a full response, because as I recall, when we reviewed your claim, also with the insurance company who was the village's insurer, and we sent it to the insurer, they recommended denial, but you were also using an old statute.
Okay. That was proven to be an old statute, because I was never made aware of that.
Well, be happy to send you the information on that, but
Thanks.
as I recall, that was one of the things that I found as I was looking through the materials, is that you were using a statute that no longer exists.
I pulled it directly off the Wisconsin government website, so it should still be valid unless they haven't updated it for some reason. I don't know why they would get rid of that statute either.
I mean, the board denied the claim, and he has 120 days to formally
Okay,
dispute that, so.
all right, so 4 months. Okay, I mean, we can look into it and get your response at that point.
Okay. And how long is that gonna take?
Any couple of
Well,
weeks?
I can certainly have something by the next meeting. I mean, we already did all of the research, and including talking with the insurance company, and if If the board goes against the insurance company, then the board's on its own in terms of acting on the claim. But if the board directs me to come back with some information, I'd be happy to do so.
And that would be the third Monday of June, so it'd be
Sure.
whatever the third Monday is.
Because like Matt said, I have 120 days to dispute it. So now that I've disputed it, does that extend statute of liability?
No?
So it's up to really how quickly you guys can make a decision.
That's
Otherwise-
maybe, that's basically 120 days, correct if I'm wrong, Lee, for him to take legal action against the village.
Right.
It's not,
Right.
yeah, it's not just getting something on an agenda.
Okay. So basically, if you want to make a decision, then I can no longer take legal action after June 24th.
Well, the board has to decide if they're going to reconsider their original decision.
Okay.
Which their original decision back in
Couple months ago.
February, was it?
Yeah, it was February.
Okay. The original decision back in February, you were noticed on, and the board accepted the insurance company's recommendation after I did some research on it and found that you were using the wrong statute. You've been quoting a statute that's no longer in effect. So the board's decision was to deny the claim. What would have to happen is that the board would have to move to reconsider that action and then get it on the next agenda. So that's the process.
Sure.
I
I mean,
mean,
legal or not, I feel like, I mean, it's kind of like a no-brainer. I mean, to take responsibility for what's wrong. There's a pothole that's 4 feet wide. I mean, has anybody in here seen a pothole that large before?
I've seen a few of them.
Yeah.
Not in the village, but a few.
Yeah, I mean, that's massive, so. All right, well, I guess should I show up to the next meeting at this point?
You can, or you might, it would be whether or not it's on the agenda. We can put it on the next agenda, whether or not to reconsider.
Okay,
And so at that point, you'll know if we're gonna talk about it some more or not.
okay, and then from there, I basically, if you guys continue to disallow, then it goes, I take legal action.
Correct, and since you've responded within that time frame, that would be your prerogative as well.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right, everything else I think we have for closed session. All right. Except for number 5, discuss and consider the minutes of the regular village board meeting of May 15th. Any comments or questions?
Second.
Okay. Motion by Troy, second by John to approve as presented. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
Jack, if I may suggest, I would suggest moving the trustee interview and have that prior to the closed session.
Sure.
And the appointment.
Is that all right with everybody, just to go down to number 9A? So we can do that, and then we can go into closed session with a full team?
Sure.
Okay. All right, 9A, interview for vacant trustee position. As I understand it, one applicant is withdrawn, so we have one here tonight. Introduce yourself, and I think everybody's seen Nick's resume in the packet.
I'm Mick Conrad, 308 Sounding Range.
All right, and does anybody have any questions for him? I'd like to ask. If not, any...
Well, his campaign machine certainly overwhelmed us with information, and since he is the only candidate, then
And
I think we can proceed. You can approve naming him to the board, and then Deb will swear him in. Or Lisa, sorry.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
so Lisa will swear him in, and he can take part in the proceedings this evening.
from your resume, yeah, I'm certainly...
I think John submitted some questions.
Sure.
I did
Yeah,
anticipate we'd have
right.
more than one candidate, but I guess simply, why do you enjoy living in Cottage Grove would be one of the questions I have.
Well, the reason I moved to Cottage Grove with my family is because it's a great place to rear children. We really enjoyed living here. It's a nice community. The school district's excellent, and now that my children are out of the house and grown, my wife and I still enjoy living here, and it's very convenient. We find that it's very easy to travel from here to just about anywhere we want to go, from the airport to Milwaukee to Chicago. And we like living in Cottage Grove on the east side.
And then the only other one on my list I would ask you is, what experience do you bring to the trustee position that you believe you can leverage?
Well, I have a lot of experience working with municipalities. I represented a municipality for a number of years. I have a lot of experience working with affordable housing, which is something I think I can perhaps help the board if they have issues they'd like to address. I would like to see the village move forward with an intergovernmental agreement with the town and the city of Madison, especially knowing what's going on in the city of Madison with the update of the comprehensive plan and what's going on there. This might be an appropriate time for the village to also look at that, as the village is also going through its update of the comprehensive plan.
Did anybody else have any questions? Otherwise, I mean, I've seen his resume. I think he's more than qualified. I'd like to nominate him to the board.
And I second the nomination.
Okay. Motion and a second then to approve Mick's application to become a village trustee. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Welcome aboard, and should we take 5, let Lisa do? Sure. Take a 5-minute recess and let Lisa take care of some paperwork.
Put you to work right away.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Applicant that we're going to vote on here is Patrick Mahovic. Mahovic, if I got that right? Makovic. Okay. We've talked, is anyone wanting to make a motion for Mr. Mahovic? I will move approval. I will tell you this, and the other individual is not here, but the one that was here that works for him, I can tell you that I have seen her in there, in that establishment, more than once by herself, and she does not have a liquor license. So you may want to make him aware of that and let him know that we know. Okay. With that, I guess I will make a motion to approve Patrick Mahovic liquor license as an agent of Monumental Enterprises.
I second.
Okay? Motion and a second. Is there any other discussion or anything to add? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. You can let Mr. Mahovic know that he's been approved.
Thank you.
All right. That is the attorney for Mr. Mahovic. Next up,
The second individual that we discussed this evening has asked to withdraw her application at this point.
okay. All right, and that would be Ms. Reynolds, so we'll put that one aside. And I have, okay, that's a copy, that's the same thing. The next applicant is Lindsay Holton at Black Bear Inn. Does anybody want to make a motion for approval or denial?
Motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second for Lindsay Holton to approve her license. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. We have one more for Stacy Listall, is that correct?
She was part of the village liquor.
Oh, that's right, she was here for, okay. All right. So we're past that. Let's get back up to the agenda here. So we're gonna, we have a presentation.
Dominic, you're dating yourself with that shirt, so I just want you to know that. Yeah, okay, thanks.
She's gonna show up to my wedding in like a
Good.
Next up is 8A, and that's a presentation by Greg Johnson from Ellers. So we'll take a little recess while we get the movie screen down and the lights turned down and that sort of thing.
If I reposition myself.
Probably see it from there, but yeah.
I'm down
you can
about
move to-
Okay. Oh, you're south, you're south.
I can see from there.
I know we'll hit the.
See out there, bricks through the windows, we're gonna help. The two that we're gonna come look at first.
Ready, Greg?
I'm ready.
All right. Just as Jack mentioned, Greg Johnson here from Ellers. We do this annually, kind of as part of the orientation process for newly elected officials, and just to kind of refresh everyone on our debt, on our tax increment districts, and kind of an overview on the financial management plan, which we'll get into more when the budget gets closer. But take it away,
Thanks,
Greg.
Matt. Good evening. My name is Greg Johnson with Ellers. I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening. As Matt mentioned, we've been working with the village since 2013. I kind of focus on three areas in particular. We've worked with the village on capital financing, issuance of debt, and refunding of existing debt when the village has issued securities, bonds. We've helped assist with that process. We've also been involved in economic development initiatives here in the village. We work with the village on each of your tax incremental finance districts. I'm going to touch on those briefly here this evening. Also help evaluate development proposals if there is TIF assistance requested. We've assisted with the village with that as needed. And as Matt mentioned, we've also been involved in putting together a financial management plan for the village, which was first done in 2016 and will be updated annually going forward. So I'm going to give kind of a broad overview in all three of those particular areas. We also have an affiliate company. My colleague Ken Herdeman is here this evening from Ellers Investment Partners. He's involved in helping village staff manage the village's investment portfolio. So he'll speak on that separately. I'm just going to begin just by talking generally about the two types of debt that most municipalities issue. All debt issuance is either covered by state statutes or covered by municipal securities regulations that are generally part of the federal tax code. And so there's two types of debt that the village has outstanding, and both are very common and used by most municipalities throughout the state. The first is general obligation debt. This is the most common form of debt outstanding. Legally, when a community issues general obligation debt, you're agreeing to levy a property tax to pay back the debt service. And that's viewed as the most secure form of debt from investors who are purchasing the village's bonds or notes. Because of that irrepealable tax levy pledge, it's a very secure form of investment. So the benefit to the village is that that's generally results in the lowest interest rate possible when you're borrowing. There is a limit to the amount of general obligation debt you can have outstanding. The Wisconsin Constitution limits that to 5% of the community's total equalized value. So that's the maximum amount of principal of general obligation debt that a community can have outstanding at any given point in time. The second form of debt is what is called revenue debt. And that legally pledges a revenue source other than the property tax levy to pay back that debt service.
The most common form of revenue debt is revenue debt that is backed by utility revenues, water revenues, or sewer revenues. And those are the types of revenue debt that the village has outstanding. When you issue revenue bonds, there are what are called coverage requirements. For the village's revenue debt outstanding, those covenants say that once the utilities pay all of their operating expenditures, those net revenues that are still remaining must be 1.1 times higher than your revenue bond payments outstanding in a given year. So you need to demonstrate over the life of those bonds are outstanding that the revenues you've legally pledged are more than sufficient to cover the debt service payments. There's no legal limit on the amount of revenue debt that you can have outstanding. There's no cap. So you can issue as much revenue debt as you can afford to pay back. I've included on page 5 just a one-page summary of all the outstanding debt obligations that are in place for the village of Cottage Grove. And that really primarily consists of general obligation notes and bonds, and then either clean water fund loans or safe drinking water fund loans. Both of those loans are administered through the state of Wisconsin, jointly by the DNR and the DO, Department of Administration. Both the Clean Water Fund loan and the Safe Drinking Water Fund loans are generally issued on a revenue bond basis, meaning that you're pledging revenues from those utilities to pay back the debt service. So we've listed here each outstanding loan obligation and the general purpose for which it was financed. So a lot of the debt that gets issued is issued for multiple purposes. So you may be financing street improvements, water improvements, TIF projects, all part of one bond issue or note issue, but you're pledging various revenue sources to pay that back. So we've listed the call dates for each of your debt issues that are outstanding. A lot of the debt that's been callable the past few years has already been refinanced for savings or restructured to make the payments match the revenue streams more closely. So most of your call dates are still several years out for your more recent bond issues. All of the environmental improvement fund loans, clean water fund, safe drinking water fund loans, those are non-callable, but you get a subsidized interest rate by using those loans. So we put the interest rate for each of those loans next to the call date. In terms of the village's general obligation debt outstanding, on page 6 is really just kind of a broad overview of the total general obligation debt service payments, principal and interest that the village has outstanding from 2018 through 2037. That's shown in the far column on the far left-hand side. So that's the annual amount of principal and interest payments based on the village's existing general obligation debt profile that you're going to make each year. Then in the columns with the numbers highlighted in red is that while the village is legally pledging to levy a property tax to make those general obligation debt service payments, practically the village uses several other revenue sources to abate or reduce what that levy would be. And that's primarily revenues from your TIF districts, primarily TIF 5, TIF 7, and then your water utilities, the water utility and the sewer utility. So each year when the village prepares its budget, it looks at all the debt that's attributable to the TIF districts and utilities, and it generally has budgeted revenue within those budgets to help pay for some of these general obligation debt service due. So using your projected budget for 2018 as an example, your total general obligation debt payments will be about $1,850,000. By the time you apply TIF increment revenue and revenue from your utilities, your net debt service levy is projected to be only about $529,000. So a significant portion of the village's general obligation debt is actually paid through non-levy revenue sources. And the village looks at that annually when it prepares its budget to make sure that those TIF revenues and those utility revenues are sufficient to make those debt service payments, because if those revenues aren't available, the village's general recourse is to then levy a property tax to pay up those, make up that shortfall. And legally, that's what you've agreed to do when you issue general obligation debt. So what we projected here in the column, in the first column in green, is the net tax levy for debt service. That's your projected, the village's projected levy for debt service going forward. This is just based on your existing debt profile. It doesn't include any new borrowings. And then we've projected your equalized value in the community going forward. Then we've highlighted in future years the projection of your tax increment district's closing. I'll talk more about that in a moment. So as that value gets added back onto the tax roll, we factor those into our projections. So that final column, second column from the right, tax rate for debt service. So in 2018, that's projected to be 85 cents per thousand of property value. So that shows what your tax rate's projected to be going forward based on your existing debt profile and applying the other revenue sources that the village historically budgets to pay for some of its debt service. I mentioned the general obligation borrowing limit under the Wisconsin Constitution. So here we've just shown where you're at presently and how your debt limit's projected to change going forward just based on your existing debt profile. At the end of 2017, you will have projected to utilize about 57% of your debt limit. Your total debt limit, again, just general obligation debt, is approximately $33.8 million. You've used about 57% of that. You have about 19.5 million outstanding. So you have remaining borrowing capacity of 14.4 million. We never recommend that a community utilize all of its general obligation debt borrowing capacity, even though legally you can. Financially, we don't recommend that. We generally recommend communities not get much higher than about 75% of your debt limit, so you're preserving some of that capacity for anything unforeseen or emergencies that may come forward in the future. So your borrowing limit is you still have a healthy amount that's available for future capital projects. Something else I wanted to mention is that the village has a bond rating outstanding that is with Standard & Poor's. The village's rating is presently AA. So to just explain Standard & Poor's rating scale, the highest rating is AAA, then AA+, then AA. So you have a very strong rating category. In their most recent rating report for the village, which was done back in March, they made several positive comments about the village overall, cited strong management and strong budget flexibility. Mainly, the village has a very strong general fund balance. At the time that we did the rating report, and the most recent audit available at that time was your 2015 audit, that had your general fund balance at about 26% of your total operating expenditures, which is consistent within the policy that the village board has adopted. Fund balance is probably one of the key metrics that the rating agencies look at. It's not the only one. They look at a variety of financial metrics and economic metrics, and look at your overall financial management. But the reason fund balance is important is that it really kind of talks about your overall liquidity and really your reserves, the money that you have available in case something unforeseen happens. In most communities, they strive to maintain a strong fund balance, and certainly at 26% of your operating expenditures for a community with a AA rating, that's pretty much right where they expect you to be. So your fund balance is consistent with what we see with other comparably rated communities in Wisconsin, and has been noted by Moody's as one of your strong credit factors. They also noted the village's commitment to the long-range financial planning, which I'll talk about in a moment. So generally, the rating agencies have looked very favorably upon the village. The higher the rating, the better, and the lower interest rates that you pay when you go and you borrow money. So this AA rating is definitely something that works in the village's favor when you do need to borrow funds.
And that AA was increased from
AA
AA minus,
correct.
and that saved us on a bond issue that was just done this last year, about $250,000 in interest.
Before I kind of transitioned into kind of tax incremental financing, are there any questions on what I've covered so far?
I have a question. On the balloon payment for Tier 5, is it 20?
Yes.
What's the amount of that?
The amount of that is about $1 million is kind of what the principal amount that is due for TIC number 5. So either, depending on the cash flow, as that gets closer, either the district will have enough cash to pay that off, or potentially the payment will be restructured as we get closer to the project.
The other question I had, 2019, GO debt outstanding. I had to jump from 25 per thousand to 1,000.
It's really a function of some of the debt service for the most recent capital projects that really going to start kind of kicking in for the most recent borrowing. So when we did the financial management plan last fall, part of that included modeling of financing for 5 years worth of capital projects. So the village finance on capital projects, I'll talk about that in a moment, earlier this year. So some of that was attributable to street improvements, which is paid through the property tax levy. So that was kind of getting layered in gradually over the next couple of years. That's the primary reason we're starting to see the levy for debt service increase a bit. It's largely due to investment in street improvements in the village. Really, the next part of the presentation that I want to focus on is tax incremental financing, or TIF districts. TIF districts are really the primary economic development tool that municipalities have to help promote redevelopment and new development within the community. So what I've done here on slide 9 is kind of put together a graphic illustration of how a tax incremental finance district works. When a tax incremental district is created, all of the properties that are identified and included within that TIF district have a taxable value at the time the district is created. That is referred to as the base value of the district. So there's a TIF district can include one parcel, it can include multiple parcels. There are limits to the amount of value that a community can have in a TIF district. The boundary needs to include contiguous properties. And that the base value of any new TID plus the increment value of all your existing TIF districts can't exceed 12% of the village's total equalized value. So there is a limit to the amount of property included in the TIF district. But when a new district is created and all those existing parcels are identified and their base value at the time the district is created, the cumulative value of all those properties is referred to as the base value. So in this example, if we have these roughly 9 parcels that are part of a TIF district, that TIF was created at this point in time. The base value of that district would be as of January 1st, 2017. The cumulative value of all those properties would be the base value of the TIF district. Once the TIF is created, all the taxing jurisdictions continue to collect their share of taxes on that base value. So the village, the county, the school district, the technical college, all get their share of taxes on that base value over the life of the district. That doesn't change. The financial benefit of a TIF district to the village is as new value gets constructed in that TIF district or the property appreciates above the base value, that is called the increment value. So as that value goes up over the base, that increment value, all the taxes that are generated on that increment value are kept by the village. That includes the village portion, the school district portion, and the technical. So it's really a partnership with your other taxing jurisdictions. They are foregoing their tax revenue just on the new development to help pay for infrastructure or other expenditures that are related to making this development materialize or redevelopment materialize, with the expectation that once the TIF district generates enough value to close and that value goes back on the tax roll, they're going to benefit in the long run by that increase in value as for the village. So that's really the financial benefit of a TIF district to a municipality. You're leveraging that tax revenue from future development to directly pay for costs related to that development needed to incur for that development to materialize.
Greg, if I could add, the other taxing jurisdictions are basically banking on either the development without entering into this arrangement that either the development would not occur at all or it would take much longer without this tax increment district creation. So
correct. Every time you amend or create a new TIF district, there's a board that's called the Joint Review Board that is statutorily required to be convened to create a district or amend a district. And that board consists of a representative from the county, the school district, the technical college, the village, and then there's a public member. So it's a 5-member board. And they ultimately have to say whether or not you create a new TIF district. So when you create or amend a TIF district, there's a public hearing by the Plan Commission, the Community Development Authority. The village board takes action, but then that joint review board, they actually have the final say as far as whether or not a TIF district is created. So the village presently has 3 TIF districts in place. So this is kind of a map that kind of summarizes kind of each TIF district. So they kind of go from north to south. So TIF 5 is really the Commerce Business Park up by the interstate. TIF 6 is kind of some of the bank property across the street, kind of that direction. And then TIF 7 is a little bit farther south, down off of County Trunk End. So there are 3 TIF districts that are currently active within the village, and I'm going to talk about each of them briefly, just kind of give you an overview of where each of them stand presently. So TIF District number 5, the Commerce Park Business Park TIF, this was created back in 2003. The expenditure period for this TIF district ends in 2021. The expenditure period is the time in which the village has to incur non-debt expenditures within the district. So any public works projects or other expenditures have to be finalized by May 19th of 2021 for this particular TIF district. This TIF district presently is generating a positive cash flow, generating enough revenue annually to cover the debt service and other expenditures that the village just charged into TIF district number 5. Right now, just based on the current increment value in the TIF and some of the projects that we have recently been under construction, over the past year or two, the TIF district is projected to close in year 2026. So there's still a remaining period of time that is needed to collect increment to cover the debt service and other costs, but it is projected to close at that point in time. Primarily, the village has funded infrastructure costs within the TIF and also provided some development incentives to particular developments within the TIF district. Most recently, as part of the financing this year, some improvements to County Trunk End and School Road were included in the debt issuance that the village completed back in April. The debt service for that portion of those projects is being paid through TIF number 5. So some of the notable developments within TIF 5 recently, the UW Clinic, which opened last year, Steel Manufacturing, their headquarter facility opened in 2015, and then the Culver's project that opened recently as well. The Atlantis Valley Foods, their light industrial building is within TIF 5. The daycare facility right up the road is also within TIF number 5. And then recently, the approved Summit Credit Union headquarters is also planned to be constructed within Commerce Park. So within the last couple of years, there's been a lot of notable development within the TIF that has generated increment and has really helped serve as the catalyst, along with some land sales that the village has brokered, to really start generating positive cash flow so that TIF number 5 is covering its obligations.
And also to add to the road improvements that Greg mentioned at School Road and End, that's what we call urbanization of that intersection, curb and gutter, and traffic lights. So the increment will be paying from TIF 5 will be paying back that debt.
TIF District number 6, this was created in 2004. The expenditure period for this district ends in October of 2019. This TIF district is projected to close in year 2025 unless it is extended. There are certain circumstances where you can extend the life of the TIF district for up to 3 years. This TIF district is presently not generating sufficient increment to cover all of its outstanding debt obligations. There were some infrastructure improvements financed within the district back in 2009. There's not been really sufficient increment generated within this district. It's only slightly a little around $30,000 a year. So when we did the financial management plan for the village last year, we really needed to identify a more permanent revenue source for the village to pay the debt service payments. And that was identified really as the property tax levy. So those levy calculations I went through earlier, that actually includes a levy to support some of the debt service for TIF 6. The village does budget some staff time and other administrative costs to the TIF district, which the increment that is being generated can help pay for those particular costs. The Wisconsin Bank and Trust project recently approved is within this TIP district, so that will help generate some additional positive cash flow, but still that in and by itself isn't going to be sufficient to cover the debt service. So the village has been levying for that the past 2 years to really help cover those particular debt service costs. Finally, TID 7, created in 2004. This expenditure period also ends in 2019. TID number 7 is projected to close in year 2024. There's some development incentives outstanding for this particular district. With the Houston's development, some of that increment is generated within their particular project as per their development agreement. That increment goes to pay a development incentive that was awarded to them. That's part of the expenditures that is paid by that TIP district, in addition to some debt service that's outstanding. Some of the recent developments in TID 7 include the Astor Memory Care facility and then the Drumlin Residences, the senior apartments. As part of the financing plan that we did back a few months ago, we restructured some of the debt service for TID number 7. There were some large balloon payments that were coming due within the next 2 years. We restructured those payments, so the increment for TID 7 is projected to cover those going forward. So all in all, the village's TIP districts, TID 5 and TID 7, presently generating sufficient cash flow to cover their obligations. TID 6, the debt service is being picked up by the property tax levy. Yes.
Now, the 6, with the bank, aren't there going to be units behind there?
Units.
Well, behind a Wisconsin Bank and Trust, isn't there going to be an extension behind that? Am I confusing
I
something?
think you're talking about the previous discussion about Horizon,
Yes.
and
Okay.
that's not approved yet. They do own the
Okay.
property though.
Okay.
Their plan is approved, they're just, the
They want-
negotiations with
Oh,
incentives that have been negotiated are kind of at an impasse with them, so, that's not moving forward at the moment.
That is in TID 6, but we haven't factored that in yet because it really isn't. Some of it's been approved, but it's not, as Matt said, it's kind of stalled.
Excuse me.
Oh, no. I'm fine, good question. So the final area I just wanted to touch on is the financial management planning that the village is undertaking. Back in last year, in 2016, we worked with the village at the staff level and also with the village finance committee and village board to develop a 5-year financial management plan for the village. This included an operating forecast and levy forecast for all of your levied funds, as well as included proposed financings for capital improvements in the village's 5-year capital improvement plan. The capital improvement plan included items that were really anticipated to be funded on a cash basis through the levy or fund balance of existing funds that were set aside for capital. Larger infrastructure projects were anticipated to be financed with debt. This process started kind of around this time last year, kind of was wrapped up right before your village's 2017 budget deliberations occurred. It really kind of sets kind of the catalyst and the framework for the village board to really kind of look at its budget and its financial needs beyond just the next 12 years or 12 months, excuse me, when you're doing your annual budget process. So it's a way to really kind of identify, what's needed from an operational standpoint, what's needed from a capital standpoint. The plan itself is just that. It's a plan, kind of outlines expectations, didn't commit the village to anything within the plan, but kind of served as the catalyst for financing some of the 17 capital improvement projects a couple months ago. And by kind of revisiting this annually, it kind of gives the village a multi-year look at trends in your property tax levy and what's needed from an operational and a capital standpoint. As I mentioned earlier, this was something that was looked at very favorably by Standard & Poor's during the village's rating call because they generally assign stronger management assessments to communities that do multi-year financial planning. So the plan itself was about a 30-page document that included various financial analysis and other information. Just to kind of give you a flavor of what we were looking at, this is kind of a one-page snapshot of kind of the model that kind of summarized, overall trends in the village's tax levy for the next several years. Again, this was done prior to the adoption of the 2017 budget. But we projected the general fund levy, the street tree fund levy, capital projects, debt service, kind of projected. We've done detailed line item projections for all these funds. This is kind of a roll-up one-page summary. We're projecting the change in the levy and the projected tax rate over the next 5 years and what that would lead to a home valued at $250,000. So again, this gets anticipated to be reviewed annually and updated to kind of give the village a multi-year look at trends from a budgeting standpoint. All municipalities in Wisconsin operate under levy limits, which are described under state statute. The levy limit is the lesser of 0% increase or the amount of your net new construction. But then there are several adjustments you can claim on your levy limit worksheet. The one most notable is all general obligation debt is excluded from levy limits. So most communities in the state take some amount of adjustment for their debt service to get to their allowable levy. So we had just calculated basically down below that if the existing levies were put in place based on the village's debt profile, the village could still remain in compliance with levy limits. So we'll be working on this with staff here over the next few month or so to kind of update the model, incorporate decisions made during the 2017 budget, the financings that were undertaken by the village board in April, and we start making adjustments based on feedback from staff to this multi-year forecast. So more on this will be coming back to the village board.
In general, I think how the current year will be used as we move forward is that'll be kind of the starting point of the budget.
Correct.
And then we would allow each individual committee and department heads to make potential suggested changes to that, which would be reviewed by finance committee and ultimately the board at a couple separate meetings. So, but yeah, it's important to update it every year because as of now it's basically a 4-year plan, so we want to make sure we keep it at a 5-year plan.
So that's kind of a high-level overview of kind of the village's debt profile, your TIF districts, and the financial planning. I'm happy to answer any other additional questions. Kind of my intent today was kind of to touch on a couple of different topics, but we're always available to help answer questions and work with staff on a more detailed basis. But if you have any immediate questions, I'm happy to take them now.
Any questions for Greg?
You're welcome. Thank you.
We also have a presentation by Ken.
Correct. I won't need the screen, so if you all want to.
Sounds good.
For a tip. For to offer. As a developer who owns the land, you can offer a tip at any time.
They have to
They have to request. Okay, and he can sell the land to anybody, and that owner, that tip can be
Great.
requested by anybody at any time.
It has
If
to
it
be, it doesn't
meets the
vary.
parameters.
It has to be this one.
As opposed to anywhere else in the state. Yeah. I'll just put that in the presentation there.
My name is Ken Herndon, I'm the president of Ellers Investment Partners. Just a little bit more background. Ellers Companies is a holding company that essentially owns 3 subsidiaries. Ellers and Associates, which Greg works with. We own another subsidiary, Entra Services. They're a P&E, and we are investment advisors. We are independent investment advisors. We only work with local governments. We have a fiduciary responsibility to only work in the village's best interest. So we've been working with the village, I think about 2013. Is it about the same time that we came on? So I just want to, again, go over, give you a few details, a little background on what we do. So, as I said, we're a wholly owned subsidiary. We're an independent investment advisor. We're registered with the Securities and Exchange Commission, and we have a fiduciary duty to work in your best interest. We are investment specialists, I said, working with only local governments. We work with over 100 communities in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois. I know the sheet here says we manage about $400 million. Actually, we manage closer to $500 million in assets for all those communities. So, because of our independence, we're not affiliated with a broker-dealer. We're not selling you things out of our inventory. We're just trying to find the best investment for you. So that gives us a little more unique service option to you. And it results in a more of a dedicated, we look at ourselves as the village's investment department, if you will. So I dedicate to you. The other thing is we are an investment advisor without discretion. That means we provide advice, we provide recommendations, we take care of all the logistics, making sure investments are placed with the custodian, which I'll talk about in a minute. But we can't do anything unless you give us the okay. And the people that we're authorized to talk to get that okay are Deb and Matt. So whenever there's an investment to be made, a suggestion, a recommendation, we have to talk to one of them, and one of them has to say, yes, you can go ahead and do that. The other way an investment advisor might work with you is if you give them discretion. Basically, you give them an amount of money, you give them your investment policy, and you just tell them as long as you don't violate the investment policy, invest in anything that you want. So we take that next step by getting approval first from you. So when you look at your investment policy, there's essentially, you have three objectives with your investments that are outlined in your investment policy. And those are objectives of, number one, keep your investments safe. And when we talk about safety, we talk about safety of principal. Make sure you don't lose money on your principal, and that's done a couple of ways by making sure that whoever the issuer of that investment is they're safe, that there's some kind of guarantee or insurance or something backing that. Plus, there's market value considerations there, because all of your investments are subject to changes in value, but only in regards to changes in interest rates. So the value of your investments can go up if interest rates go down, the value can go down if interest rates go up. So when we talk about safety, we're also trying to look at those kind of things as well. Because we are an independent investment advisor, we don't hold any of your assets. You have a custodian that does that, okay? And that's TD Ameritrade Institutional. So whenever we do an investment for you, those investments are placed in that custodial account. So all the investments have their own backing. You're FDIC insured, your principal and interest might be guaranteed by an agency of the United States government or the United States Treasury. Plus, the custodian has other insurance, if you will, to prevent against bankruptcy of a broker-dealer or a custodian or any fraud. So all your investments are safe, even the individual investments themselves, and then the fact that they're placed with a custodian. Okay. Plus, as part of the Ehlers family, we're very close to the municipal market. We know what's going on in the municipal market, plus other debt markets, and we can draw on the experience. We've been doing this for 10 years. Ehlers has been in serving local governments for over 60 years. So you have that backing as well. thing I'll talk about is liquidity. When you're looking at investments, that's the second objective. Well, the first thing we did for you when we were engaged, we did a cash flow forecast. And the purpose of that is, as the liquidity portion of it says, we want to make sure that you have enough to pay your bills every day. But the more you keep liquid, in accounts that you can write a check or make a phone call and get funds, that's what you earn the least amount on. Okay? Although that pays the lowest return. So we wanted to do a cash flow forecast for you. So it identifies that liquidity portion, essentially a minimum liquidity portion that you need to make sure you can pay your bills every day. And then is there an amount above that that you can invest and earn a higher return? So when Greg talks about your fund balance and what you have there, a lot of that is what we help you invest and get a higher rate of return on. And I'll talk about that return and such. So that liquidity and then all the investments that you have, even though an investment might mature 3 years from now, I don't want to give you the impression that that gets locked in a drawer and you can't open it for 3 years. All the investments themselves are liquid as well, in that there's a market for all of the investments that you do. They're traded, they're bought and sold every day. So even if we do the cash forecast correctly, we'll never have to sell an investment before maturity. But if we do, if there's some emergency or something in the village and that has to be done, it can be done. Okay, so that's another part of the liquidity. And the cash flow forecast that we use, that's the basis for the investment strategies that we put together for you. So the final part of that, of your objective, is that yield part. Why would you work with an advisor if they can't help you improve your yield? So, but first you have to make sure we're adhering to the objectives of safety and liquidity, but then it's through the strategy and our resource and our access to investment markets to provide different investments for you. That's where that value comes in, and that's how we help provide a higher return for you. Finally, we report on all this for you as well. You get 2 reports from us every month. One, you get a report from the custodian that lists all the investments that you own, okay, and any transactions that took place in your custodial account, any investments made. Okay. Then the other report it's called a portfolio account report. Same information that the custodial report gives to you, but it also provides you with other information, like performance for the month. How did your investments do for that month, for that quarter, for that year? Gives you accrual reports and virtually anything that you need to do your accounting for that. Okay. The last thing I'll draw your attention to is when I talk about the yield part. At least annually, we're going to come to a meeting here and do a portfolio review for you. We did one a few months ago. I believe early in the fall or end of the summer. So we'll be back here, in August or September to do a formal portfolio review to talk about how are your investments meeting those objectives, how aligned in your investment funds.
Can you let the board know the types of investments that we can make?
Sure.
Because obviously the goal is to get a good return. However, as a municipality, there are only certain types of investments that we can make. So we can't necessarily, we could earn more, but we're restricted by law.
Municipalities, as far as their investments go, are subject to statute 66.0603, which is a kind of a short list of the types of investments that a municipality can invest in. Certificates of deposit, deposits at banks, securities of the United States Treasury, securities of United States agency, government-sponsored enterprises as well. You can invest in the debt certificates of other municipalities. You can invest in the debt of corporations as long as they meet rating requirements and their maturity doesn't exceed 7 years. Okay? So it's kind of a short list, right? But our duty as a fiduciary is to recommend investments to you within that list that we believe are in your best interest. So there are a number of things that you can invest in, that are permissible by statute, but we may not recommend those to you because we don't feel that they'd be in your best interest. Example, mortgage-backed securities. Their structures are very, very complicated. Their value is subject to very small changes in interest rates. So for a lot of reasons, there are certain investments that we don't feel are in your best interest, so we won't recommend them. Okay? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, I covered it for you. I say at least annually, we're going to do a portfolio review for you. We'll be doing that in a couple of months, but I wanted to give you kind of an idea of how your investments are doing. Some of you new to the board, one of the types of investments that is available to you is the local government investment pool, the LGIP. That is a pool that is managed by the state of Wisconsin Investment Board, actually. And it's essentially a money market account that the board manages only for local governments, and it's to provide them with a source of liquidity. Okay? So what I've done here is to try to make a comparison of your investments and compare it as how it's doing as opposed to the local government investment pool. So what I've done here is for the year the 12 months that just ended at the end of May. And so it lists every single month of how much you managed, what you earned, and things like that. So I'll just draw your attention to the right-hand column. For the year that just ended, we managed a little bit more than $2.8 million for the village. On that, you earned a little bit more than $23,000. Now, if Deb went back and looked in her records, I will tell you right now, you're not going to come up with $23,000 because this is interest that has been paid to you, but also interest that has accrued but not yet paid. Okay, so that's what that $23,000 includes. You paid us a little bit more than $3,700 to manage those assets for the year. So your net return was $19,589. Okay? If you would have had that amount, that $2.8 million in the local government investment pool for the same period, you would have earned a little bit more than $10,000. Okay? So even after you paid us to manage this, you still earned $9,000 more than what you would have earned if you just would have left those funds in the local government investment pool. Now, that's just one benchmark that we use. There's other benchmarks out there, but we like to use that one because most communities are familiar with the LGIP and how that works and everything. Yes, sir.
However, for us to analyze that, is the risk profile the same between what you're doing and what the state's doing?
I can say that it is because the same things, the local government investment pool has an investment policy as well, which limits those investments to the same type of investments that are permissible for the village. The only difference is because the local government investment pool has to provide liquidity for you. If you calculated the average weighted maturity of the local government investment pool, at the end of May, I believe it was only 48 days. Okay? Your portfolio was 931 days. Okay? Same types of investments. Government, if you looked at the portfolio of the local government investment pool, it's going to have CDs, agencies, treasury securities, things like that. And the same as your portfolio, the only difference is all of those investments are going to be very short. Very short maturity.
Is there an index you could use that would be similar to what you're doing on 900 days?
Yes,
So I can
could.
actually see whether you're
And-
actually performing or
Right,
not.
and when we do the annual review for you, when we do that annual portfolio review, that's when we make those other comparisons. So we'll compare it again to the LGIP and to other indexes that are more related to essentially the average weighted maturity of your portfolio. But I just, I say I do this just to give you an idea of, how your return stacks up to other things that you could be doing. The LGIP is not the only thing, okay? But it's just, a way that's familiar to most board members and what's available to them. Okay. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. If it's okay with the board, on item 10B2, the Plan Commission report, there is a representative here from Shady Grove. The annexation that was approved by the Plan Commission, if we're okay with moving down there and so we can get out of here in a timely fashion, if that's all right. Sure. Okay. Plan Commission met on June 1st, and if you're familiar with the Shady Grove territory, we did approve the annexation. I believe it was 5-1, if I remember. I think so. So I'll let Aaron talk about it, and the representative is here tonight.
Yeah, you should have the staff report in your packet. Page 2 of that has a map showing the territory. I think there's also the map that is part of the application petition. The total is about 75.7 acres. The area south of Cottage Grove Road was recently added to the urban service area. The area to the north is already in. I guess Chuck was his name? Yeah. Chuck can probably explain the mechanics a little bit of the petition and how we got to where we are here.
Yeah, thank you. As Aaron mentioned, the Plan Commission approved this annexation already. The state of Wisconsin, through the Department of Administration, has also reviewed this petition and has determined that it's in the public's interest as well. I think that we previously provided documentation showing all of the statutory requirements were fulfilled in terms of notices and things of that nature. Aaron also mentioned that this property has also already been, or has been recommended to be added to the urban service area for the village as well. So the proposed annexation and the proposed use are consistent with the village's comprehensive plan as well. I think that all the boxes have kind of been checked now. If there aren't any questions, we would request that the board approve the annexation.
Does anyone have any questions?
We haven't resolved the road issue with Bus Road, have we?
I don't think so. That would be something that would probably come more during the
It's gotta
precise
come after
implementation
this
plan.
piece of it, but
I think so.
certainly that's my concern.
Yeah.
What's the issue?
There's a cemetery in the road.
Right in the middle, okay, yeah.
If you go
If it
across.
goes, if it extends south of Cottage
Yeah.
Grove Road.
Yeah, and what we're trying to avoid is an offset intersection
Yeah,
there.
yeah, another- yeah.
That's just our main
Those are
concern.
Yeah.
Trying to avoid a violence.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's unacceptable if we
Yeah.
have another one of those, because there's accidents here.
That's too prone.
So that is definitely something, you know, we have to share and sort out.
Yeah, the street will have to run a little different or something, I don't know. Just so we have two ins and out kind of a thing, is kind of what we're looking for, so. Any other questions for this gentleman? Otherwise, I will move approval of ordinance 03-2017, annexing territory from the township of Cottage Grove to the village of Cottage Grove for Shady Grove LLC. Is there any other discussion or a second? Okay. Motion and a second to approve the annexation ordinance. Is there any other discussion for this? Okay, if not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion, one abstention. Okay, motion passes. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Jack, I'm not sure, but I think we skipped over the approval of minutes.
Did we,
No,
I think we caught him.
Did we get it?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, now we can get back to the agenda here. I just wanted to, okay, we got 9A and B done. We are now at 9C, discuss and consider liquor license applications for licensing year July 2017 to June 2018. You'll see a list of them in your documents. I'm not sure what page it is, but it's an Excel spreadsheet, a couple pages worth. That's operator, no, that's building liquor license. So, you'll see the recommendations from the police department. There was one that was not recommended, but I think we resolved that issue. I don't think there's a need to take these individually unless anyone feels differently, or has any questions.
Take those approved.
Okay. Would someone want to make a motion to approve our liquor license for 2017?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the 2017-2018 liquor license applicants as presented.
Both Class A and Class B.
Class A and Class B. Motion accepts that, second accepts that. All right, motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on the license applicants? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Now we're on to 9D. This is amusement devices, just obviously the game machines, I'm assuming, that kind of thing. We only have 3 of them. That's Outpost, Papa Jimmy's, Black Bear. Is there any issues with any of these folks, Chief? I don't think so.
I don't think so, no.
Okay. If not, I will approve, or make a motion to approve the
Second.
2017 amusement device applicants. Jim, you seconded? Okay. Second by Jim. Any other discussion on this? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Moving right along, we're down to item E, cigarette license applications. And you'll see a list of current holders, and I guess they're all renewals, looks like. Okay. I will make a motion to approve the 2017-2018 tobacco and cigarette license applicants. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second to approve the 2017-2018 tobacco and cigarette license applicants. Any other discussion on those? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. Okay, motion passes. All right, we're down to 9F. These are the renewal operator licenses. And there's one individual here on this sheet that I don't know that was not recommended.
They did not request to come in. I gave
Okay.
them the opportunity, but they just took it as not, so that one shouldn't be approved.
Okay. That would be Jonathan Rosenberg. Okay. So if you're down on the bottom of page 2, that person did not show up?
He didn't
And-
want to come in.
He didn't want to come in. Okay. I guess given that, does anybody have any thoughts on just approving all of them except for Mr. Rosenberg? Does that sound?
And the other two that were already discussed in
That we
closed session.
took care of?
Yeah.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the 2017-2018 operators license applicants renewals anew with the exception of Mr. Rosenberg at the bottom of page 2.
Jack, just to clarify for the record, Reynolds is also off this list.
That's correct.
And
as she
then-
went through, okay.
So the approval should not include Reynolds or Rosenberg at this point.
Correct. So I'll amend my motion to not include Reynolds or Rosenberg at this time. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the liquor license, operator license applicants with the exception of Ms. Reynolds and Mr. Rosenberg. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. All right, that brings us down to 9H, discuss and consider the sale of village, take it?
No, we need to do G. We did the renewals and then we need to do
Oh,
the
I'm
new
sorry,
operators.
the new ones I missed one here. Okay.
Sorry.
So the new ones are separate.
They're on the same list as just.
Yeah, so we have to do basically 2 motions here on the same sheet. So these are the new people, and actually Ms. Reynolds is on that, and Mr. Rosenberg was on renewal. So I will make a motion to approve the new applicants with the exception of Ms. Reynolds.
Second.
And a second from Forrest. Is there any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. All right, now we're down to 9H, which is discuss and consider the sale of village-owned vacant land for development. Trustee Williams brought this forward on the agenda, so I'll let him talk. You'll see an item from staff in here giving a general overview of what village-owned property we currently have.
So I brought this up because we had a discussion about the old pump station and the lift station property, one on Vilas and one on Main Street. And just looking at how many other properties that the village owns that are vacant that could potentially be developed, tapping into that non-used resource, unless of course it's designated for something in the future for the village or some other future use. So I thought to bring this in front of the board to see if, one, there's a willingness and approval of the board to do this for each specific property, and obviously there would have to be interest from somebody, a developer, in order for the sale to actually occur. So that's the whole impetus of me bringing this in front of the board.
How many properties are there available to sell? You say there's a number.
No, that was in your packet. There's 2 on Vilas where the old lift station was.
Yep.
One on Main Street where the old well was.
Right south of St. Patrick's Church,
Yes.
there's an old well station. There's about the size of a residential lot.
Right.
And I think it's all done being remediated or capped off or whatever they were doing, or it's going to be.
I haven't gone by there.
I don't think it has.
Yeah, so
Not yet?
we just signed the paperwork to notice for them to proceed, so that was last week. I haven't been by there to see if they've started.
They haven't started.
No.
But they're flexible. We gave a flexible date.
We have a pre-construction meeting next Wednesday
Okay.
afternoon. Can we approve the
The demolition.
shaking the properties?
Down 12 feet, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys did that.
Mhm.
But now we can sell it, so.
No, it's-
Or what, I know we can vote to sell it.
Yeah, I think once it's been signed off as being closed well or whatever they do, then we can put it on the market. Is that how that works, Matt, for the well property?
Yeah, it could be. We'd have to check with our auditors just as far as where the proceeds would go.
Mhm.
The well property and the lift station property, I believe that those funds would go to those individual utilities.
Okay.
I mean, it's still, taxpayer money in the sense of, revenues that people pay, so
Sure.
it would benefit the village that way. There, Aaron had looked into, some of the wetland issues with the lift station site off of Vilas, and much of that property would likely not be developable. There would have to be still an actual delineation done prior to selling to figure out, the extent of that, but.
Okay.
So, and then Deb also reached out to our assessor to just get some approximate, if those were, right now they're $0 on the tax
Right.
levy because it's village owned. But hypothetically, if it was on the market, approximately what would it be? And let me just pull that up here.
How much would the assessment be?
Sure, so the well site would be approximately, the land would be worth $45,000. So that would be about $236 of tax revenue.
Okay.
The lift station site, again, this depends on how much of it's developable, but approximately $75,000, and that would be $393. And then the larger three, if both of these lots were combined, the two parcels that make up the vacant land by the municipal services building, that would be about $283,500. So that would be close to $1,500 in taxes.
Assuming that nothing's built on it, right? Yeah.
Right. And then additional, every additional $1 million, for instance, of development would add $5,200 of tax base.
Okay. And then obviously the outlots, I think, they're just outlots, there's not much you can.
Yeah, Aaron did a search on Access Dane of all village properties, and it comes up with 90 plus, but that includes stormwater ponds and lots and things like that are
Okay.
not developable. So,
No, I think this is more for the board to give staff direction on these things. If they're sitting there, can someone develop them? Does somebody want to develop it?
Right.
Can it bring some sort of value back to the village? Yes, but maybe it's if it's in an area where it could be a business or whatever, then there may be more potential.
Do we list it with a broker, the same broker that we have in the industrial park?
Well,
I mean, is that-
that's one of the questions that we would need to answer is how do we want to sell this? Does the village want to be in charge of selling it? Do you want a broker brought in?
Yeah.
Those are issues that, once you make the decision, yeah, we ought to sell, then you need to address those.
I mean, with the number 1 and number 2 properties, I don't really have any strong feelings, I guess, one way or the other. I know what the third property that was bought supposedly is one package because there's a future need for potential public works and maybe staff, someday a village hall down there. This staff here, I think, they're at capacity. Village hall.
I have a question on that too.
Sure.
I know that the floodplain has actually moved farther up toward these homes. Some of them are actually in an actual floodplain now, is my recollection. And so I wonder, just when you get down here, I can't see any delineation at all on here where that floodplain's at,
Talking about number 2.
on number 2.
Yeah, I think we need to check with CARPC why they have so much of an environmental corridor on there. I know there's a stream or drainage way along the eastern side. And there has to be a 75-foot setback off of that. So the eastern half of those parcels would, at a minimum, have to be part of the corridor. The question would be, are there slopes contributing into that were the reason for having it as part of the corridor? And we'd probably also want to do some kind of borings there just to make sure the soils are even buildable.
So I really wonder what it's even developable. The second issue would be, Homburg had, when he did this development in South Lawn, he put an environmental easement along the back, along the creek. And does that also run across this property, or was it just not extended across because it was village owned?
Yeah, the corridor that's shown on these properties lines up to the ones on the back of.
So there's going to be a corridor on the part of it too that would have to be released to be able to build. it.
Yeah, if Carpsy's not willing to release that, then basically the whole site is used up for all practical purposes.
And the third question I have is when you start looking at points of access along here, is there going to be a point of access issue with a driveway here, one down here?
They would have to be combined. There's not enough street frontage on lot 6.
So you're probably really talking about one big lot.
One lot.
Right.
I just,
Yeah.
I just can't see it happening. Lots here, but.
Because just the way they're shaped, I don't think that
Correct.
second lot with a string on it is really a lot.
And to the left of that, that's an old farmhouse, right? Is that correct? Is that, am I understanding that? Yeah.
Yeah, correct.
We're also maintaining it, we're also mowing it, we're also doing other things to it, so, I mean, that's the only.
Right.
The question is really, can anybody build on it?
Yeah.
If it's even one big lot?
Matt, was this, back at budget time, we were gonna do a facilities long-term study of some of the stuff, well, not long-term, but kind of a, for the foreseeable future, what our needs would be. Was this included in that, or was this?
No, that proposal was to have an independent party do a space needs analysis on all of our municipal buildings, Village Hall, Municipal Services Building, and the Bonnie Road property,
Yep.
and to come up with options on, at 5-year, 10-year, and 20-year increments of recommendations for potential future locations or expansion, those types of recommendations, but prioritizing other things in the budget just to make the
Right.
cut that year.
JJ, I know you park some of your public works vehicles at the Bonnie Road property. How many vehicles or how much equipment and stuff do you?
Presently, there's 5 pieces of equipment there today. That'll vary a little bit seasonally, but it's roughly, I'd say 3/4 of the building's probably full.
Okay.
That individual property, I believe, is it on an agenda coming up?
Up to tomorrow night.
Okay.
At the Public Properties Committee, they have been, from time to time, discussing that property. And just as a reminder, when the village was part of the Joint Police Department, as part of the lease of their building there with the Houstons, there was an additional 5,000 to 8,000 square foot storage shed
Yep.
that Public Works also utilized. So then when we're no longer in that, some of that equipment is what's in the Bonnie Road property. So, and then there's also salt storage and brush compost at that property right now.
For the new folks, Bonnie Road properties, old Public Works building.
Yeah.
Down on Bonnie Road.
But it's not a vacant lot.
Right.
It's
not
really
just-
not.
Right, yeah, so that's not-
It's
that's
just
not-
being used because we need some space, so.
Yeah.
And also has a salt building behind it too, so if we ever did think about doing any of that, it's got
Yeah,
it all.
Has a what behind it?
Salt building
Okay.
for road salt.
Yeah, yeah. And
Mick-
the compost is,
what-
goes
Mick had a
there too, right?
question.
Yeah.
I have a question number 2. That currently there's not a sidewalk along there. If that was developed, would that be, who would pay for that and what would be required there? I can tell you this is an area that a lot of children walk through and it's not a good situation now. And it's a need of improvement.
That's actually got, it's mostly grown over, but that stretch there has bays for bike path, and I believe that's in the long-term, in the financial management plan is to continue that path, but it involves crossing the creek there, so it's a little more involved than just laying down the asphalt, but.
Yeah, there's a bridge included.
Yeah.
I guess I look at that property, whether they do one lot or two, I just don't see the village is in the land business and it's doing nothing for us right now. It doesn't look horrible, but it doesn't look great. You got a big plastic pipe coming out of the ground. I mean, a home would look much nicer on there than what's there.
And then maybe you start to begin to address
Yeah.
the sidewalk or pit. Really, it's a bike path situation.
Well, my question is, if this is developed, would the owner be required to put the sidewalk in, or would that still be a village improvement?
There have been different arrangements depending with various businesses. Sometimes it's been part of a negotiated developer agreement. So sometimes, it just depended on the circumstances. Sometimes we've split it. Sometimes they pay for all of it. So, but in this instance with a homeowner, I'm not sure how much there would be a negotiation on a one lot situation, but I guess the board can discuss it at that point in time. But there isn't a set protocol, I don't believe.
Why wasn't there a sidewalk put in there when they redid the road? I'm just
I don't know, I can't speak to that.
Yeah, it's back to next.
I mean, that would have been the time to do it, I would have thought. It's already tore up, but.
My recollection at the time that the developer was required to actually lift that area up, like, and when Hamburg did this, that there was supposed to be some and what happened instead was there was the speed was reduced in that section instead of having the developer actually go in and raise it up from the sightlines standpoint.
There was also some discussion about the developer purchasing that lot. And that I don't know what accounts for there not being a sidewalk, but there was some discussion which eventually fell through. And another question I have, Aaron, do you know what it would cost to get a wetland delineation? Would we need to hire MSA or someone to do that?
I think first we might just ask the question with CARPC to see if there's any flexibility to changing the corridor there. Because I'm not sure it's really a wetland issue so much as are the soils suitable.
Yeah, because it's high above the creek on that side.
And other than that, it sounds like a 70-foot setback.
At a minimum, there'd have to be 75 feet off the creek.
Yeah, that's why you're only looking at like one big piece of property.
Long driveway.
Shovel.
That's off, it's off the east side, not off the street.
Yeah, it's
Oh, okay.
Do we want to take these individually and just go through, or we've done discussed it?
Anybody have any other questions on any of these individual properties?
Well, I don't know if we have enough information to know whether number 2 is even developable. I mean, we could certainly give a recommendation move forward, but we don't really know. We don't know yet. We haven't delineated anything on this map to show any sort of developable area.
Just to clarify, we would have more information. This is just a preliminary item and to get direction for staff to do more.
Yeah,
So
we can have, if we want staff to look into this more and go ahead and get that kind of thing. And
Can I make
Absolutely.
I'd like to make a motion for staff to take a look at parcel number 2 as to whether it's developable, to looking at setback in the stream and other, and try to identify an area that would be developable and bring that back to us. To the board.
I'll second that. That way we know what we don't know or whatever. Any other discussion on parcel number 2 from Nick's motion?
That includes number 1 as well.
Did you include number 1?
I'll include number 1.
I mean, because really, I think it's going to end up being one parcel based on.
I'll include number 1
Okay.
also in my motion.
All right.
Assume if there's a cost to making that determination, we would come back to you to get the okay to.
You want to, we can do a not to exceed amount if you have an idea what it would cost to do that. Otherwise, if you want to come back to us with the cost, and we'll consider it at that time. Just the direction would be to find out more information for the environmental stuff. Wetland.
Yeah, I guess I'm just thinking at this point, we could look and see what's publicly, I mean, there's an environmental corridor, there's already a delineated line for the flood, I can't remember if it's a floodplain or what it is, but there's a delineated line that runs through there. I think it's the floodplain running through there.
Access Dane wasn't showing floodplain there, so other than this, and it wasn't showing wetlands, so other than the stream, I'm not sure what's driving that corridor, so that's really kind of the question.
So if we're looking at just the stream, we would know that would just be the 75 feet back.
Okay.
So I don't know at this point we need to have any additional funds.
So just find out how
Spending money.
flexible that
Yeah.
corridor is.
Okay. All right, so the motion then is for number 1 and number 2 to have staff find out some more information for us. That's correct. Okay. Any other discussion on that motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Property, or I guess, yeah, property number 3. That is a land, if you look at your notes here from staff, was purchased in conjunction with the Municipal Services Building, Parks, Rec, and Public Works. The board in 2014 thought that the vacant land would eventually be utilized for a future municipal building, basically putting everything together. Could be used, as we said, for Public Works if they need more space built on. We own it, and so I guess, I don't know what your thoughts are on those parcels. There are actually 2 parcels, but that could be 1 parcel as well, I suppose.
One question, just the zoning for this area. What's allowed?
It's planned industrial, so it could be storage or light industrial.
And there's another property next to that, correct?
To the north, yes, there's,
And is that in for sale at any point?
yeah, that's, Hamburg's been selling that since the
Okay.
park started.
Yeah, that's been for sale forever, I think.
How many acres is that one? Do you know?
The
So
issue
it's-
in 2014
There it is,
was,
yeah.
again, the board thought that
It's
they
about 2
could
acres.
possibly expand or make use of that space, and the land would be right next to the current now municipal building. And I think this was part of what we were trying to include in that study that we had to remove from the budget last year as to what our long-term needs are.
I guess I haven't heard anything more definitive than we might need it in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. I mean, that could be generating revenue, and the village may entirely change in 20 years. I think it should be sold.
Any other
We're
thoughts?
not in the land business. I don't know why we think we're in the land business.
Question I have is currently, how, are we at capacity here now? Is there going to be a need in the short term for additional space for our own staff?
There's no office space remaining here. We could add a cubicle or 2 at Village Hall. There's 10,000 square feet of potential office space that's not built out yet at the Municipal Services Building for future expansion. So that's pretty much the extent of it. There's some office space in the Bonnie Road property. However, there needs to be some, probably some maintenance to make that office space more usable. But the suggestion on the space needs type of projection would just be, you know, what uses would go into that municipal services building space and when, and just kind of the timing of, with our growth and staff projections, when would we build a new village hall, where would it go? Maybe that isn't the best spot for it, you know, but a third party to help us with some other options and suggestions, someone that does these types of studies frequently.
I mean, it wouldn't have to cost the amount that it would have cost in the last budget. It could be a scaled down study, so if we just concentrated on this. But I guess my concern is with the old Public Works building, at some point, when we get to the point, I'd rather see something built on here and get rid of the old Public Works building at some point.
Well, I think that's from a staff perspective. I mean, the study might come back and say that for one reason or another, this land might not be the best spot for future municipal buildings. So, or maybe they'd say maybe only need half of it, so maybe half of it could be sold.
Okay.
So,
I mean, I think it's worth getting that information. Then again, you gotta pay for it too. Or if you're, Jim,
I'm just was curious, I mean, this lot is obviously much larger than the building. Have we ever looked at whether this building could be expanded if for future needs?
Or could we go up?
This one is good.
Or could we go up?
Yeah,
Probably pretty expensive to go up.
yeah.
Well,
But I mean, just
yeah.
going east or west, but.
No, that hasn't been looked into, but those will kind of be all the types of items that we would include in a scope for,
Okay.
of options that someone would present to us.
It's typically an architect that does those studies, so they can look at this building, and is it worth adding on to? Is it,
Mhm.
you know, where would you put stuff to make it all work?
Yeah, it's not like this is the worst for wear, the building, current building, so I would think that'd be feasible. There's room on the side of the building, right?
There is, I don't know how much. I'd like like an impartial third-party expert to tell us that. I'd like to. I
You don't want to
guess
just put a shed on?
Yeah. Put a tin roof on it.
Yeah.
Forrest, what are your thoughts?
Got nothing really to contribute.
Okay, Larry?
I'd like to see a feasible study, if we could do, not an expensive one, within our means.
Right.
It was expensive.
Was it expensive?
In the budget, the long-term, saving, and I don't know what property that entailed, it was almost.
I don't know what it was last time.
Sorry, Jed, what was that?
Was it almost $25,000 or something?
Yeah, so the city of Fitchburg did one recently, and it was, for them, it was 50,000.
Okay.
And the one for the village would be about 25,000.
We could just focus on this area.
But I think the idea is, you know, you don't necessarily, at least I wouldn't recommend limiting it on one area. But, you know, if we're gonna get recommendations, it would be nice to have, you know, everything considered. Just so you get those different options.
So maybe the first step would be RFPs for a study. That
We could do that. I mean, our engineers and architects, MSA does that work. That doesn't mean that we would have to use them for some specialized project, so you could go out for an RFP, that's up to the board.
Any other thoughts?
I guess the question is, would we ever really want to put our village office building over here? And if we don't, why don't we just sell it? Do we need to go through a study to make that decision?
Sergeant at Arms?
Check into the board, so that's all you're gonna call it.
Just use your one.
I mean, I don't ever see us in the next 5 years needing more than the buildings that we have, other than we're gonna probably have to maintain the old Bonnie facility because it's getting in tough shape. And it has a salt building behind it that we built that we have to have access to either way.
Yeah, if we sell Bonnie Road, we have to have
So
an
you're-
easement for the salt shed. I don't know if you're all familiar with that area, but that's an interesting sell too, to have an easement.
And we don't know what the village will be configured in 20 years. I have no idea. I'm not sure a consultant would know, because that depends on how the economies go. We're gonna have recessions, we're gonna have, other things going on, and growth. We may want that facility out towards the interstate, because we need more access, because we can't, I have no idea. But I don't see us using it in 5 years.
Yeah,
Or
you
10
you
years.
could spend a lot of money on a study to do something like that, and all it takes is one terrorist attack, and that's the end of it, as far as all these predictions.
And we don't have to sell it at fire sale rates, the land. We can sell it at market rates and hopefully buy land in the market rate in
Exactly.
the future, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're not closing off opportunities of building a better village hall.
The other limitation we have is we are running out of space in the industrial park for development.
Uh-huh.
We have a finite number of properties left until you go across the interstate.
Yeah.
But again, that's all private. And I agree with Troy, we shouldn't be in the land business. We're not developers. That's not our deal.
As far as planning though for future, it would be beneficial to know where a future building would go. So, how would we go about that process?
They would look at our current layout of where our facilities are and talk to us about what we're gonna need in the future, and where the best spot would be. All right, I guess I'd like some more information. I'm not ready to say to sell this tonight, but the other ones I don't really care. I mean, Otherwise, I'll make a motion to have staff get some more information on
I'll second.
this. Okay.
What more information do we need, I guess?
Yeah, that's the only question I have.
I'd rather have an impartial third party tell us what we're gonna need than one of us, because then if it doesn't happen, then.
At what cost?
We could put a 10,000 in there.
So we're gonna spend $10,000 deciding on selling 2 properties that we may end up selling, and then we're getting 10,000 less for it because we're spending that money. Or we can sell them now, and as the village grows and develops, we can react at that point.
I think there's one, we have no idea if there's even a market for these properties.
That's the other question.
I mean, it's real questionable whether someone's going to offer.
Yeah, it's
Right,
like
so
3
there's
acres.
the property north of it is for sale, so.
Right,
but-
it's
but-
different.
but it-
Well, no, I agree with
But
that.
I think opening ourselves up to the opportunity of a really good sale, I don't think would hurt, because we can, if we get a really good price for it, then we can take that money and in the future.
Save it. We're gonna have some.
I think it'd be really, to have it very centrally located, a village hall, and this one's a little off, off center. But
For now.
I mean, yeah,
We don't know.
who knows, so.
Well, you set a TID up here, it's going to have a 0 basis, so.
Right.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is maybe it's beneficial to have a conversation with Hamburg. You know, hey, we're kicking this idea around at 0 cost to us. Have you seen any interest in the property that you've had? What if we had 3 in a row? Does that make the,
Get his impression of the market.
yeah, I mean, he's trying to sell that property. You could table this and at least investigate that at no dollars for us. And then if he says yes or no or whatever, then we at least have another piece of information to go off of.
So start with talking to Andrew Homburg, give direction to staff, start there.
Just to see what interest there has been in his properties there. I have no idea.
Yeah, because he's got some other ones, obviously, that have been there for some time. A couple that have been built on. Mick, are you okay with that if I make that?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So we know what the market is? All right, I'll make the motion first that we talk to the developer of the surrounding properties as far as what the market is and what the potential is. So, you want a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
Can I ask another question about just properties in general? And it seems like the village ends up with a lot of outlots when we do new developments.
Yeah,
and
I didn't know we had 93, whatever outlots.
And I'm just curious why that doesn't just shift to homeowners. Why does the village end up with these properties? Make one lot bigger
To
because
ensure they get
it's an
maintained
outlot, I
properly,
mean,
mostly.
or make 3 lots bigger. I guess I'm trying to understand. 'Cause
Yeah, if it's a stormwater pond, I think, and JJ can add to this, but I don't think we want to count on 20 private landowners each doing their part or not.
Well,
So
I guess I have a problem with that because we are not doing anything with Conservancy Court right now, and they have flooded backyards. I dug out one near my house, and it was not done over the last several years, so we're not maintaining what we have. So to his point, that's crap. Sorry, it is.
Conservancy Court wasn't, there's a project in the budget for that one.
Right.
And the creek is a separate, it's not, we don't own that. There's water quality things we do, but, well, the one right across from you is.
Yes.
Yep.
So, I mean,
Oh.
by the way, it's filling up to sand. From this.
Yeah.
I mentioned that earlier, but
Okay. I
So,
mean, so,
the creek is unique because those are all privately owned, there's easements there, but, the other ones, most of these outlets our outlots are stormwater ponds around the village. And
Okay.
other dry ponds, things like that,
I mean, if you look at where I live, I back up to the creek, and, you know, there's a certain easement that I can't do anything from the creek to so many feet. In theory, they could have sold that lot that I'm on, and they could have just let this as an outlot. Instead, it's maintained, I mow it. I do all that stuff, and I'm not sure why we're not looking at doing that with future developments, and it takes some of the burden off of us as a municipality to do that stuff.
mean, that can be discussed during the planning process.
Yeah. I mean, some of the outlots, I would say, are fairly way bigger than they need to be. Or I don't know, I mean, I'm not an engineer, but you just kind of wonder why the developer just didn't want to build more buildings on some of that.
There's probably a reason, because they definitely want to build more.
Yeah.
Hey, keep the outlots in the developer's hands, that way they have to maintain it.
Well,
They're the ones that are developing it.
I think on the front end, we're going to do that, which a lot of municipalities do. And that's something we need to do as part of the development process and make it part of our process to require it. Because the reality is you're going to need to set up a homeowners association.
Right.
Set these up, and that's going to, you know, there's a lot of things that we, as the village can do to make that work. But that's a decision we need to make, that's the direction we're going to go.
So it starts with the developer agreement.
Well, it starts in the planning process. I mean, when they come to the planning commission, and when our staff reviews their proposal, then we need to, is the village going to take a new position, which is, these are your responsibility, not ours.
Okay.
Because at this point, there are a lot of, I mean, I was surprised that there were 90, but in some ways, I'm not surprised after 30-plus years
I suppose,
of
yeah.
development agreements. But we need to decide as a village, are we going to adopt a new policy where outlots are the responsibility of the developer?
That would start with plan commission.
I think that's a great thought, to make it someone else's responsibility.
And just a question on process for, at some point down the road, discussing how, when, where for future facilities. What kind of process would you guys like to see? I just bring this up because we wouldn't want to end up in a situation like with the police department and public works where there wasn't any potential designated location for a new facility, and a decision had to be made quickly.
Right.
And we didn't have the municipal service building it worked out, but it'd be nice to know the timing approximately, just because maybe we have in a plan that says in 2023 there'll be a new village hall, it'll be at such and such location. Maybe that year comes along and we don't actually need a new village hall at that time, but at least there will be a public understanding of, such and such is the location, this is the approximate cost, size of it, those types of things. So I was just kind of curious on process and how you'd like to go about that.
Any thoughts on where you start?
Well, a couple thoughts on that. If we're looking at economic development, we want to build a core here ever in the village. There's a couple ways of doing it. One is through using a TID and TIF. The other is using a public building as part of that. And you see other municipalities doing that. I mean, that can be the catalyst really to build the square or whatever you're going to do, which would necessitate a lot of planning on the part of the village to make something like that work and entice someone to come in with private development dollars to come alongside and do something. But that's something that we may want to think about. If we're going to do a study, how do we maximize the return we're going to get for the village as a whole?
I mean, I agree with what Mick said. We might as well get all the information.
So Lee, what would the next step be for future development and maybe changing policy for outlots and things like that?
Well, the first thing that I wrote down was talking to the village engineer, because that's usually where the outlots come from. And they say, this is what we need, and so I want to find out from Mike, well, what is your policy? And then I think what we would need to do is to make it part of the process that says, okay, from now on, if you're going to develop in the village, you're going to be responsible for the outlots. So it's just a matter now of figuring out what is our policy now, what goes into what his recommendation is to us as the staff, and then where do we go from here in terms of who's responsible for those things. I'm sure that developers who have been here for a while probably aren't going to leap at the idea that now they're responsible for the outlot, but you know, that's all part of the process.
So it could go on the next plan commission agenda and have Mike tell us what we can do or not do?
Sure. I mean,
Okay.
you know, we can certainly look at that, and I don't know, when's the next,
June 29th?
June 29th? So you've got almost a month. I mean, you know, between Aaron and I, we could talk with Mike and get some information for the plan commission on outlots, just say this is what's come up at the village board meeting, and we'd like to, you know what's the feasibility of doing this. I think that's where you start.
Yeah, because I've got neighbors on the other side of me that there's an outlot, there's a house next to me, there's an outlot and a house, and the people mow it, they go inside where the water's supposed to drain. I mean, it looks beautiful, it looks like a lawn, and they've taken it upon themselves to do that, I believe. That it's not their property to do it.
Well, years ago, the village, I think it was along Governor Taylor Park, there's where the park meets the backyards. A lot of those people have turned those where it meets into their own private sporting complex. So the village board came up with the idea that we were going to start cracking down on that, which meant Village Hall was full for a number of meetings with people who were quite unhappy with this idea that their sports complex was being taken over by the village. And I know that at the time, I think we sent out letters that said, well, it's not really your property, and, you know, to avoid any adverse possession, but, you know, that all kind of died off too. So it's just something that we're going to have to look at in terms of what are we willing to require, and I think that we start with the development process to look at that. And I'm not sure what kind, if any, restrictions there are on outlots. If we have to, if it is our responsibility, just, you know, let's get the information for the board and for the plan commission. Start at the plan commission.
All right, awesome.
Yeah, that's easy. We don't even need a motion, really just put it on the next plan commission.
Do we need to approve the Main Street property then, or
Main-
disapprove, or One
Number 1.
number one, or skipped over that, I think?
Well, that was kind of combined with.
No, there's 2 lots on Vilas.
Yeah.
1 and 2.
Okay. So if you go up to your first drawing in the packet, you'll see that where the well is going to be capped off and whatever. I mean,
I make a motion that we sell it as soon as it's
saleable.
available to sell. It's a residential lot, it's between 2 houses.
Yeah, and I think it's
It
big enough.
doesn't make
for
any
that.
sense not to have somebody
Okay.
take advantage of it.
There's that motion.
When we have the lift station and the well site, as far as, should we discuss with Ruta Bush to get what their recommendation would be on a list price and bring that back?
As long as it doesn't cost us any money.
It doesn't cost any money until
Are they?
they're commissioned.
We've asked them similar, I mean, just questions on like body road value, things like that.
Okay.
So they've never charged us for that.
Larry, you seconded?
Yeah.
Okay. Motion and a second then to put that property for well number 1 on the market as soon as it's saleable and consult with Ruta Bush's market value. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. I think that covers everything because the outlots are on plan commission. Okay. All right, moving right along. Reports from village boards, commissions, and committees, Pier Court Steering Committee? Who's on Pier Court? I don't.
Harvey was on.
Harvey, well, okay, that's right. Harvey's not here, I guess we're gonna have to skip that one. It is in your packet, you can see how things went in Pier Court. Chief Labor is usually there, Lieutenant Wagner, I believe.
Yeah, they just give us an update on Pier Court and adjudications and how well kids are doing and how many are in the program.
Okay. All right, Board of Review documents, you can see the agenda in there, I don't believe you got a big crowd.
We met the required 2 hours.
Okay. All right, Deer Grove EMS Commission, that was Harvey and also John.
Yeah, and there'll be a new chairperson from Deerfield now for that going forward. Harvey did his term too. So we met on the 18th of May, approved the financial and budgetary things of aging accounts. Nothing too exciting there. The run rates are fairly consistent from prior year. We did discuss the regionalization RFP. That is a very long, drawn-out process. So anything that's been said about that happening anytime soon, they're sadly mistaken. It is being encouraged at the state level. I think that's been said. Harvey's relayed that as well, particularly for folks that are struggling getting volunteers and such. And that's where our concern is. We don't have a problem now or an issue now. It's whether or not we'll have an issue in getting staff in the future, and certainly gain opportunities as your area grows because they get an opportunity to practice more. So the folks from Marshall are kind of still considering it, but not very enthusiastically. Cambridge is very enthusiastic about it. So it's really got to be a win-win for the district as a whole. And again, it's a 3 to 5 year process at least. The RFP is going out, and then that'll take a few months to get back in. So we'll have more information probably late summer about that. If the consultants are interested, and what they're if there's associated fees, there's also grants and some other things too. So they may actually get it covered from that perspective. The 2 ambulances, I think the first one is in service now. The second one should be, I believe, now as well. So that will be much nicer from a safety perspective as well as consistency and everything. From that angle, there was a brief discussion about honorary membership, which I think is pretty much tabled right now because they do need to figure that out. The chief needs to figure that out because the board wasn't too keen on that. The training remediation policy was tabled. There's some more work that needs to be done there. We approved the fuel cards policy, and we meet next on, I believe, June 15th.
Okay.
Troy was there as well, so I don't know if I missed something else.
For the benefit of the new people, that's regionalization thing, how many municipalities do we have involved?
There's there's several over in the Marshall area. Marshall has gone to the issue of having staff issues and them being able to cover 24/7. And so it seems to have stabilized, and so they think they're pulling back, but they've still signed out, signaled that they were going to get out their overall plan with the various small municipalities around them by the end of this year. So they're going to have to. They may be able to maintain their own service, but at some point they'll be looking for something. And whether or not those, like the town of York or other organization or other municipalities around them, what they decide to do is in their hands. We don't know yet. And it doesn't mean we have to accept them open arms. This has to be eventually, if all the stars align, it had to be approved by all the municipalities involved. The other one would be Cambridge and potentially the town of Deerfield, which is not in the district right now, even though we drive through it and end up helping the current provider about 25% of the time.
Okay.
So,
Sounds good.
John, what's an honorary membership?
someone who no longer, that's the question, whether they're licensed as a paramedic or not. It's really, they've done it in the past for paramedics or volunteers that no longer feel like they can have the time, or maybe their skill sets aren't where they need to be, but they want to help out with the service. They want to help out with the pancake breakfast. They want to help out, propagate the service. So that's where the term came from. But it needs to be better defined, and it's really not at this point. So it's really bad in the chief's hand to revamp his idea and again, it's still not approved or anything like that.
All right, Parks, Rec, and Forestry Committee?
Yes, we had a good meeting. We had Shady Grove there talking about the new subdivision, and we talked about what we wanted to do. Sean suggested a playground, and that's actually next to a piece of land that is, sort of falls under that category of where is that going to go? It's, I mean, all is said and done, it's not owned by anybody, so is it going to fall to the village as well? And anyway, so, but we talked about, getting back to parks though, we talked about the open plan, the Parks and Open Space Plan Survey, and we discussed Sean's report of his goals and objectives, and then we had a no-show from the rugby guys. So, anything else to add? No?
Okay, Law Enforcement Committee, we met on the 23rd. I'll let Chief talk us through. There was a couple of updates for some issues and the retirement of a longtime member. So.
Right, Jamie Doyle retired as the Administrative Services Manager, so we put out on Leagues of Wisconsin Municipalities, Indeed.com, and Wisconsin Law Enforcement Network. We received 100 applications, and we have it narrowed down to probably 8 people we'll interview sometime around the 15th of this month. And so we're pretty happy with the candidates that we received for that position. Did an update on the Crawford drive-by shooting. We're still investigating it, haven't made an arrest. And then we talked about starting the replacement for the school resource officer a month earlier, because we had already received permission from the previous board to do that, and so we're going to do that, get that officer started a month earlier, so we're not short an officer for 2 months
Right.
while that person's in field training.
Okay. All right, Natwig landfill monitoring.
That met on 30th,
Yep.
and that consisted of the gases. And I was not present at that meeting. So
We were there. Why are you talking?
Yeah, so I have no report.
I got the agenda, so I thought I was supposed to go, but
Okay.
I just ended up showing up. But anyway, what they told us, though, that we didn't have any way of checking, is that the price for monitoring has been stable. It didn't go up at all, and our share didn't go up at all. And we took the town board's word for it, so.
Jim sent me a message, so we're,
Yeah.
pass it on to Deb, so I have to check with her to see if that's,
Okay.
we can confirm that or.
Yeah, as long as it's the same,
Yeah.
then. Because
Do you know
the
that?
bottom line is the landfill is not emitting any methane, hasn't in the last several years, and it's very stable, and we can't get out of paying for monitoring, because we're going to pay for it forever.
Yeah.
And the monitoring, there's a contract with Strand.
Yes.
That does that, and that has been the same for the
Right,
last.
they've been very stable, that's what we were told, they didn't lie to us, that's good.
Yep.
All right,
Yep.
we took their word.
All right.
Jimmy, after you've been to enough meetings, then I'll give you a copy of the actual settlement agreement that sets your committee up, so
Okay.
I'll be more reading for you.
Okay.
All right.
He
More
wasn't
homework.
supposed to be there.
Plan
So
commission, we've already
just
covered
we got lucky.
that, I guess.
Yeah, we just had a quorum.
Shady Grove annexation.
I might want to add from Plan Commission that there was
Another
a,
month, you can go next time.
we were scheduled to, well, we did have a public hearing, held a public hearing on the Drumlin.
Probably had 25 people here, I don't know, something like that.
Yeah, if not more. Public hearing on the Drumlin Grove subdivision. The applicant never contacted us, but we did find out about a minute before the meeting that they weren't showing up, and it sounds like they're not moving forward with the development, but
Just went off the radar.
but people still,
Drumlin Grove on the Helgoland property,
Oh, okay.
north of Stony Hill Road.
south of Gaston Road.
Yeah.
So we still held the public hearing, people were here, and hypothetically, it could still be taken on by a different developer,
Yeah.
and the property owner still wants to pursue annexation.
And it's
So,
completely surrounded by the village, right? Yeah.
Not completely,
Two sides.
but it is contiguous.
Yeah.
So,
So do we ever hear back from DNR on the lack of, it sounds like lack of pull permit for leveling that and the issues now that are resulting in it?
yeah, not the DNR, but the county.
Okay, oh, the county, right,
Yeah,
sorry.
and Jack and JJ met with Joe Parisi from Dane County and have been in contact with our supervisor, Danielle.
Danielle.
And I guess Jack or JJ can update on that.
Yep, she wants to be involved, obviously, since it's her district to help, but she wasn't at the meeting with Mr. Parisi and myself, but he's going to look into, was there supposed to be a permit, who was supposed to get a permit, why, I mean, we showed him all the topographic maps from the various years, and you can see the elevation changes, which really contributes to the problem. It may not be the total problem, but it made it a lot worse. So hopefully help from the county will help us. Because with all the rain this year, it's not good. It needs to be fixed, and hopefully the development that was proposed would have helped some of that, but this guy just, like I said, went off the radar and didn't show up, so we don't know if or when he's coming back. So
They have an agreement with the landowner that they have a due diligence period that runs until June 30th. So they technically are still under contract with the land, but that's all we know.
So there's several.
Ironically, they had contacted Aaron and then Aaron to me in terms of getting a rough draft of a developer agreement. And before we could even get back to them, then they didn't show up for their meeting. So
And it was
we're not really
especially-
sure what
Yeah.
this is all about.
It was a special plan commission meeting for them.
Yeah, they requested this special date.
And along those same lines, what about the apartment people, or what's their next step?
I contacted them early last week to just ask them for an update, you know, are you looking to get back on the agenda.
Uh-huh.
Did not hear from them until this morning, and just said that they're working through budget issues.
Okay.
And they'll let us know,
All right.
so,
Okay.
but yeah, that's unfortunate that
Yeah.
the communication isn't better.
It is, yeah. The plan commission. Reports from village officers, Troy?
No report.
Okay. Mick?
No report?
Okay, Forrest?
No report?
Jim?
No report?
Larry?
No report.
John?
No report.
And I'll say the same. Out of here, Pete?
Well, as I told Jim tonight, there was just a case decided by, I think, county judge on the DNR violating open meeting law with regard to some decisions that involve Blue Mountain State Park. And I've read the decision, and I think that it touches on a number of issues that we've talked about. So I'll provide a copy to people and just a summary of it, but it talks about walking quorums, it talks about what you can and can't do, and I think it's a well-reasoned opinion, so they'll be coming in a packet soon.
Okay. Was that in the paper?
Yeah. Well, I think on Saturday.
There,
All right. Matt?
I read it.
Staff heard a brief presentation from a company called Polco. They're a new technology company that does specialized surveying, and it allows municipalities to put out questions to maybe particular agenda items or an issue, and anyone can respond to it. However, the village will get feedback as to if the respondents are registered voters or not, and where they're located in the village, and you get a lot of additional data. And it's not just a simple question that gets asked. Staff can include a paragraph or two of background information, so someone's not, you're not spinning someone to answer a certain way based on the question. You're providing other background information. And it seemed pretty interesting from a staff perspective, and I've asked them to come in July, I think the second meeting in July, to let you all see it and see if it's something that you'd all be interested in. It's something that Dane County has taken on, and about 5 or 6 other local municipalities, and I had heard about it from a regional administrator meeting, and it seems potentially worthwhile, and it's it's not too pricey. It's in the $2,000 to $3,000 annual expenditure range. But anyway, that's a future item. And then also, we'll be having our 2016 audit review from Baker Tilly here. And once again, the bottom line outcome as far as our budget is concerned, we're in the black again for, I'm not sure how many years running, certainly as long as I've been here. And that takes all staff to really be cognizant and respectful of their budgets and being willing to cut back when someone's individual budget happens to go over. So, but all in all, it should be a good report.
Okay. All right, Aaron?
No report.
Chief Labor, anything else?
Nothing else.
All right, John or JJ, anything? Okay. All right, item number 12, consider approval of vouchers. Any comments, questions, or motions for approval? Not, I'll make a motion to approve the vouchers as presented.
Second.
Okay. Motion and second to approve vouchers as presented. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll abstain, so I didn't review
Okay. One abstention. Thanks, Nick. All right, motion passes. Correspondence, I don't think we got anything else official. Okay. Future agenda items for village board.
Jack, I don't know if you have any updates on appointments.
I'm going to talk with Nick, and we're getting things distributed evenly now that we've got the full 7 people again.
Sure.
I was trying to put things on 6 people, and the matrix wasn't working.
Questions for Lee on that potential motion to reconsider? Is that supposed to be,
Well,
how does that work?
That's the whole point. If the board wants to make a motion for reconsideration on the request by Mr. Rydell, then you can make that request at the next meeting. But I will tell you that I'm going to recommend against that.
Yep.
Because we've already looked at this situation. The insurance company has made a recommendation. Mr. Rydell was noticed about the meeting back in February, did not come. He'd been quite vocal prior to that time. I was actually surprised that he didn't come back in February. But I'll just tell the board right here that I'll recommend against a motion for reconsideration because I don't think that it
And I would agree, so
justified.
nobody wants that on the board agenda for next time. Yeah.
Just in general, so we're, the protections that municipalities have, basically, we would have to have given direct knowledge of a potential issue and then deliberately, and to not take care of the issue within a reasonable time frame. Then we would potentially be liable. But insurance looked into it, talked to JJ, and they determined that, proper maintenance procedures are being followed, and, so.
JJ would actually have to be out there digging the hole. But our insurance carrier was very, I looked up the statute. Why is he saying that? And it turned out the statute had been changed. And the insurance company said, oh, well, that's interesting.
Everyone drives the road. It does have some rough stretches, but it is routinely that you see new cold patches. It doesn't last that long, but as far as our liability, that is the extent of it, and we're protected at that, as long as we're doing that. And we do have.
Okay with it?
And it is in our long-range plan. I think in 2 years, that section of BB, by 2019, the section in question is the plan for reconstruction.
Okay.
Jack, my plan was to write back to him and just say, here's the statutory section that you were citing, this is what changed. The recommendation we have from the insurance company is such and such, and, I don't plan to be supportive of the board considering this.
Fine with me. I
And
don't
at
think
least
any of
it's-
us want to go down there.
So we're not,
Yep. That works.
so at least we communicate with him.
Yep. That would be fine. All right, anything else for future agenda items? If not, that brings us down to adjournment.
Motion adjourned.
Second. Motion and second to adjourn, non-debatable. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.